Hello my dear chess friends, welcome to new video course and welcome to our first video. Our first video would be about game played in 1953, that is game Spassky-Smyslov. Smyslov became world chess president on that year later, and eventually later he will gain his chess title in his match against Botvinnik. But what I want to say is that in this video course I would first pay attention on some games Spassky played as youngster. This video course would be done in some chronological way, and I will start with first phase of Spassky's career. Of course, I want to present games when he was just a teenager. That game was played when Spassky was almost 16 years old, and you can see how he managed to demolish actually one of top players of that time, maybe just definitely with Botvinnik the strongest war player. What I want to say is that later I would switch to challenger era in Spassky's career. Of course, later some matches from some games from World Championship matches, and finally I want to present games after Spassky lost chess crown. So let's start now with Spassky's teenage days, and let's see what happened in that first game. Spassky-Smyslov, 1953. Spassky opened game with d4. Earlier he would switch to e4, and he would be absolutely equally dangerous with both initial moves. After knight f6, c4, e6, everything is normal. Nimzo, Indian, Smyslov was well equipped about this opening. Bishop g5, nowadays that is known as not so popular, but okay. Simply white players rather go for some other approaches like e3, like f3, like knight f3, simply, or queen c2 of course, simply not often transferring bishop to that diagonal h4, d8. But okay, after c5, white plays d5 to block the position and to gain space. Other way would be e3, that is so usual. And black decided here to take, and d6. That is natural response from black. What I want to say, in that Benoni structure, black bishop should not go to b8, to b7, maybe to a6 in some moment, but definitely it must find some task on that c8, h3 diagonal, probably getting later g4 spot or something else. It is not typical Benoni, of course. Black bishop is not on g7, it is on b4, but still that should be just okay for black. Black has chances here, even on the king side, after potential assault g5 in some moment, but that must be taken so carefully because of weakening king side without having bishop placed on fan chatted position on g7. White played e3. Normal move, logical move to finish development. Knight bd7, and instead of predicted and normally locking bishop d3, Spassky played interesting bishop b5. We can see that, of course, here we can see typical something typical for teenagers, that's creativity. Why to go for well-known patterns if you can imagine and if you can create some your own theory. Bishop b5 is very interesting. With bishop b5, white wants maybe to take the knight because he thinks his bishop is not so needed, and later just to expand in the center. Knight d7 can be very good piece because it affects on e4, e5 at once, which is on the program definitely sooner or later. So white has 5 against 4 on the king side, and you want definitely to play e5 at some moment. moreover, white bishop is not so needed, because if white plays, for instance, at first stage e4 and f3, that fits with bishop. You have dark square bishop, you should set pawns on light squares. There is the logic then to give away light square bishop. But moreover, what I like to say, base your decision of exchange problem, base your decision on pieces that will stay on the board, not on the pieces that will leave the board. Formally, maybe that bishop is not inferior to that knight, but let's think about pieces that will stay on the board. The point is, black bishop, light square bishop would be well restricted after e4 and f3 without special task, and bishop on h4 can be dangerous with this pinning or with attacking pawn on d6. Bishop b4 would disappear board sooner or later, or if it goes back, a5 c7 would be just weak. It is so long maneuver, of course, to transfer bishop to diagonal h8 a1 to a5 d8 and later f6, let's say. So in that structure there is logic to give bishop for knight, because it looks like white knight would be superior to black bishop, to black any bishop. Let's see what happened in the game. After all these moves, castling knight ge2, knight e5, black refutes exchange, castling knight g6, bishop g3, everything is normal, and knight h5. Black didn't want to allow bishop takes d7. White wanted to get forced to do it. White expected move a6, which would be waste of time for black, and white wanted to take then, but now bishop b5 still works something. It controls some important squares like d7 and e8, but other bishop will vanish the board, and white tries now, if that already happens, to bring bishop back to d3 and to continue playing on the king side, because there are white chances. Why there? Because 5 against 4. Always plays on the side, always play on the side you have more units, doesn't matter pieces or pawns. Knight g3, normally knight takes, knight e5, bishop e2. White is preparing not only f4 and e4, f4 and e4. White is preparing also bishop g4 to exchange the bishop. Then white will stay with knight that would be better than bishop. Black bishop b4 has many pawns on its color, and if black takes on c3, white can use that pawn on c3 to strengthen center with c4, and then after d5 pawn is well defended, let me mark like this, then e and f pawn can easily go ahead. So that can be just global plan. Black decided to take immediately. There are other options, maybe more logical, to play a6 with b5 if possible, or as I would like here, it is to play f5, not only to prevent some bishop g4 exchange, but also to fight against white expanding. If white plays f4 and then e4, that is not the same. Position would be a bit open, pawn d4 will lose support, and that would be solid for black. But debatable move bishop c3 happened, and I think that must be in white's favor. B takes c3, queen h4. That was black's idea. Now looks impossible for white to advance, because queen there would be so dangerous, but who cares? Knight g4. Yeah, it would be good for black if that knight can survive, right? But white eliminates the knight, and here we get clear situation. Let's stop. Still 5 against 4 on the king side. White should play on the king side. e3, e4, e5 to launch this pawn to create passed pawn, or maybe f5, f6 if possible to demolish black king side. After f5, if black plays f6, I do not talk about catching bishop on g4, maybe that bishop is somewhere else. White will try to install knight on weakened e6 spot. That knight would be a real bone in the throat, and If black takes, there will be dangerous and probably decisive weapon for white, that is defended passed pawn on e6. So both e5 and f5 would be so dangerous for black. Same time on the queen side, black has just nothing. White will not play c4 after b5 to give black passed and defended pawn on c5. White can just wait here. Black needs so much time to prove he has anything. And after white plays a3, then black plays b5, a5, and b4, pawn on b4 rather would be weak than dangerous. So what is problem for black here? Even if black wants to play on the queen side, he cannot easily regroup from queen side to king side and from king side to queen side back. Because pawn d5 practically a bit splits black army on two, and especially after white advances e pawn, that would be so visible. So white on the move plays queen a4, not only to stop b5, not only to intend queen d7, but there is positional threat of something like this with pin on the fourth rank. And black must react. He played quickly bishop c8, but I would more like here queen e7 with tempo to organize defense with bishop d7 gaining time. After e4, something like this, and black can try to organize something. After bishop c8, bad. Bishop works nothing, rook works nothing. Let's mark them red because these pieces are bad. White just follows his plan. Now it's clear black is completely outplayed, and even Smyslov couldn't defend black position. I'm pretty sure if white plays precisely, there is no escape for black. Queen e7 was must again, but okay, queen c2. For some reason, I would prefer rook a e1. Yeah, of course. If white wants e5 due to pin on the fourth rank, still that move would be needed. h5, and now strange and I must say bad move. Yeah, first game I present and I must criticize Spassky. But don't forget, he was not even 16 old. He was almost 16 old in that moment against top player as Smyslov was in 1953. Spassky played rook f2. Why this move? Well, he wants to have chance to double, and he wants to kick queen, but that would be better to do with rook f3. So Spassky maybe at this moment was not familiar about using files as trampolines, maybe not well experienced about this. So after rook f3, h4, h3, now knight f1, and threat f5 with damaging black structure with f6 looks so decisive that is absolutely dominant. Rook f2 was played, b5, and e5. Now still f5 was more dangerous with the idea to try to trap that queen. Of course you cannot take the queen, queen can escape, but still after f6, for instance, knight e2, as I mentioned earlier, this would bring white strategically winning position. After e5, h4, still white must work a lot to convert. Bishop f5, queen d2, more or less everything is normal, but now black did fatal and last mistake in that game. Rook a8 is evident move. Black must hope white will take, so after rook d5, white cannot play c4 and pawn d5 is in danger. White will not take, white will play knight e3, of course, but situation is not so clear. White is much better after queen h5, but white must work a lot. D takes c5, that is terrible mistake because now white gets f-file, white gets two connected pawns, not both passed, but they are stronger right now. And bishop g6, queen g6 was better to control 6th rank, but I think here game is strategically over. Rook e1, phalanx is just unstoppable now. h3 to weaken the king, but who cares? Maybe even b4 was better, at least for a moment if possible, to transfer game to the queen side. Whenever you are outplayed and opponent wants to play on his side, on planned flank, just try, even for a moment, to deflect his troops. Just try to force him to switch focus to opposite part. Maybe after that he will get confused and maybe he will continue persistently playing on that wrong side. Simply, at least you will delay your defeat. But after h3 is played, who cares about h takes, right? There is just 93, pawn g2 can exist, no problem for white. Take a look, there is 95, 97 with dangerous attack on h5. Black played bishop e4, but tempo, 93. Tempo, rook f4, queen e5 loses, game over. And after bishop g2, there is knight f5, fantastic move. Not only threatening knight e7 with rook h4, there is also threat of sacrificing knight on g7 even with many threats. So white can also attack not with knight e7 and rook on h5. White can also attack placing rook on g file with g7 pawn as a target. What can black do? Absolutely nothing. g6 loses to very beautiful move. This one. Take a look, white king is safe here. In this case, there is just easy win for white with rook h6. As you can see, if queen takes, there is just queen h6. And what can black do? If f6, yeah, ef, queen f6, knight e7, queen falls, game over. So after rook f8, what happened is rook e3 with, I mentioned earlier about this attack on g7, not knight e7 because that would be so bad now. There is nothing white has. So rook e3 this time with attacking on g7. After black moves g pawn, queen h6 in some moment. But here, even that demolishing move, absolutely there is no escape. As you can see, there is queen h6, next move with a mate. So if rook d6, white just took the queen and black decided to resign. Something like this would not help because there is beautiful mate. What is so beautiful here? Take a look on white. Rook dances. Rook f4 was on dark and again on dark, and in some variation it will come to dark square h4 with a mate. Other move also uses dark squares to attack dark square g7. Queen is ready to join using dark square diagonal, and who cares about light square bishop? Yes, it is on dangerous position on g2, but there is nothing that bishop can do to us. So that's how Spassky demolished Smyslov in their game in 1953. That game was just a reminder to other chess world that new chess star is rising, and very soon whole chess world will learn about that name, about that new star, Boris Spassky. Let's see what happened in that game. Well, interesting play for white, and not so consistent, creative, maybe logical, maybe not, but definitely not bad. And here black allowed mistake, bishop c3. Then he did nothing to stop white phalanx. He voluntarily closed the rook. Queen e7 is better with bishop d7. So here white has freedom to organize whatever he wants on the king side. He should do it with rook f3, you know, and that is much better version for white. In the game, rook f2 was played, b5. Now white went active, and black now started doing fatal mistakes. d5, rook d8 was needed. After that, black could do queen g6 to resist better, but anyway, I do not think that will affect on the result. Here white just offered pawn g2. Who cares about this pawn? White uses all his pieces to attack black king frontally and directly, and black cannot do anything because white uses almost strictly dark squares. His Smyslov's light square bishop is just useless here. After knight g7, game is over, and after knight e6, great Vasily Smyslov decided to resign. So that was everything about that fabulous game. I'm pretty sure you could learn a lot from this one, and you enjoyed that. I think this is the first game Spassky used to demolish some big fish, as Smyslov was in 1953. So later in this year, Smyslov will win in the famous candidates tournament in Zurich and become World Chess Crown pretender. So you can see how that win for Spassky was important, and how that could motivate him to work harder and to get everything he got later in chess. Let's go to next video.